Discover military-grade cybersecurity for
So,
all,
what's the core
focusing on
mission behind your
evolving
company?
threats and expert
So,
advice.
in a nutshell, we're looking to provide the highest standard of cybersecurity, so military grade standard of cybersecurity to the private sector, and make the level of expertise that we have accessible to everybody. What we see as a fundamental problem is, everybody's getting hacked nowadays, and there's all sorts of, businesses are investing millions of dollars into their companies, into their technology, and then, they struggle to protect that from the evolving threats, from the advanced threats that are out there. Especially North Korea has been very active recently, targeting people in the cryptocurrency space and the finance space. And so we just want to make sure that everybody has access to the highest level of expertise to protect their assets.
And how do you get your customers? Like, do you have? I'm guessing you don't have a marketing plan, right? Do people reach out to you, or is it like you see in the news that ABC Tone got hacked? You reach out to them, hey, yes, you got hacked. We can help you out.
So there's a mixture of things. We partnered with a few companies like Cellnet, and a few other big companies to help us with the marketing and sales side of things. We have a few different channels that we use to get customers in the door and meet people, but for the most part, the overwhelming majority of our customers are word of mouth. So, a company that we did good work for, they're happy with what we did, and then they kind of tell other people about it.
And you've been in business, like, I think 3 or 4 years.
Yep, about 4 years, 3, 4 years, yeah.
So I think a lot of new business they struggle with pricing, right? So how did you figure pricing out? Like, was it like experimentation? Is it like by the project, by hour? Like, how did you finally come to your current pricing model?
So that is a difficult one. So we do, we've done a lot of market research and try to find, because a lot of the services that we're providing are fairly standard. They're fairly ubiquitous across this industry. For example, like a penetration test, testing a network, trying to hack into a network and find the vulnerabilities. That takes a certain amount of work. The people that we have on our team to do that work, charge us a certain amount per hour to do that work. And there's a certain standard, pricing for that most companies are using. So sort of a mixture of all those things that we use to come up with our pricing.
So, like, you're here of a small business, right? And you talk about all the nations there's like North Korea, China, Russia. If I'm a small business owner, should I even be worried about those big level things?
So, the short answer is yes, but the longer answer is it really depends upon what you're doing. So, if you think about it, if you are doing, for example, payment processing, if you're a small payment processor, there are certain groups out there that they're not really thinking so much about, they would love to get the big payment processors, but they sort of have a standard process that allow them to target payment processors in general. So it depends upon which industry you're in and how, prevalent those types of companies get hacked.
And do you still have your security clearance from the military, or that's gone now?
Yeah, I still do.
Do and how long do you keep that?
So I think that I'm not sure. I think it's maybe 4 or 5 years from the last time you've used it, something
Okay.
like that.
And do you need that for your current job, or this is something that you just needed in the military?
Yeah, so it's not super required for my
Okay.
current job. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have any like government contracts, or is it all private companies?
So we do a bit of work with government, local, state, and
Mhm.
federal, and then we also do private sector work.
And from your point of view, what's the difference between dealing with government entities versus private?
Sorry, what was that?
Is there any difference between working with government entities and private companies?
So with of course working with government entities, there's actually, I would just say it's just slightly more difficult all around. So there are the differences. There's a little bit more paperwork. There's a lot more qualification. There's a lot more due diligence involved. But so you do have to jump through more hoops. But all of that stuff, in my mind, is totally understandable. Because they don't want to be working with vendors that are untrustworthy.
So based on what you know, your experience, like, how's the U.S. rank globally as far as like cybersecurity? Are we the number one nation? Is China number one? How do we rank as far as all that kind of stuff?
So, ranking the top three out there, USA is number one, and just sort of objectively speaking, our capabilities are better than everybody else's as far as both offense, defense, the way that we approach cybersecurity, our technical capabilities are just better. And then Russia and China are after us.
And we're number one just because we have the better tech, or people are better, or what do you think? What makes us better than other countries?
I think it's a mixture of all of those. So, we have a big budget. We spend a lot of money on it, more than those other countries do. We also have some of the top talent in the world. We're very good with our strategy and the way that we approach things. And we also have a lot of innovation that comes out of the United States. So, especially China, you hear a lot of the stories of how they're constantly trying to steal our information, and they're trying to hack into our government contractors and steal our blueprints for new technology. We just innovate faster, and we're better at what we do.
Yeah, I always say like we're better innovators, China's better copiers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So what's your take on like using AI for cybersecurity operations? Is that something that's really happening right now, or is this a bunch of hype?
So I can see AI as being useful, just as useful for cybersecurity as it is in other places. We don't employ a whole lot of it. We do, use the typical products that are out there that employ AI. So, for example, baseline and anomaly analysis. So, using AI to get a baseline of what normal looks like in a business, and then if something stands out as very strange, AI can help you identify that. So there are definitely use cases for AI, but it's not I wouldn't say that as of right now, it's a huge game changer yet.
Do you see a time in the future where like, the US AI and the China AI are like fighting this stuff between the two different AIs and humans are completely out of it?
It's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility, but I'm not, I couldn't give you what my vision of that would look like.
Okay. So suppose you bring a company on, right? How do you explain all this technical stuff to someone who's not technical, right? How do you explain to someone what you're doing for them in layman's terms?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like a lot of our job, especially interacting with customers, is that translation piece. So trying to break down a lot of these technical things into common language like risk, and describing, what's possible, what could go wrong, what could happen, and then some very, sort of plain language ways of describing what you can do to stop those things.
And then so change the subject real fast. What's something you're proud of that's not public, right? It's not on your resume, not on LinkedIn, but something you're proud of you've done in your life that you're really proud of?
I'd say that, I've written a lot of very interesting tools and projects. I've built a lot of cool stuff that, I think is cool just for my own reasons, but not that maybe other people wouldn't think it's as cool.
And then so far, what's been the hardest part of running your business?
I think what's very difficult is just understanding things more from the business perspective rather than the technical perspective. So, my background is a lot of hands-on keyboard, building and, writing code and things of that nature. But understanding more from, profit and loss perspective, customer management, all of that type of stuff.
So let's suppose someone just got a degree in cybersecurity, right? They've never done before in their life. What advice do you have for them to get their cybersecurity career started?
So I think that, the industry certifications and a lot of the paper that demonstrates that you know what you're doing, so degrees, certifications, things of that nature, those are all helpful, and those can all sort of demonstrate to an employer that you are putting effort in, like you're putting, you're doing what you can do, and you have an interest and you have the commitment to it. But there's never going to be a substitute for hands-on experience in this industry. I think right now there's a big influx of entry-level people coming into cybersecurity, especially because they're hearing that there's a lot of money in it. But there's a big deficit in sort of the experienced, very advanced, cybersecurity talent out there. So the faster you can close that gap as an entry-level person, the better. So what that might mean is taking a lower level job or something that pays less potentially, just to get that experience, because that experience is invaluable.
So what's like a career path for a person like that? Is like an entry-level job, and then 20 years later become like, I don't know, VP of cybersecurity for Microsoft? Is there like a standard career path?
So in cybersecurity, there are a few decisions you sort of have to make early on. So for example, something that attracts a lot of people to cybersecurity is the idea of being a hacker or doing offensive, or doing like penetration tests and those kinds of things, red team. But the reality of that job can end up being a lot more boring than it sounds like, when you first get into it. So you kind of have to determine really early on what you enjoy doing in the industry. And the faster you can identify what you enjoy doing, the better off you're going to be.
So you personally, suppose you're hiring for a position. What's your vetting process? Like, how do you prove to yourself that Jason is actually knows what he's doing?
So for the most part, there's an interview process and those kinds of things, of course, but for the most part, it's fairly easy to tell, pretty quickly based on somebody's experience. If they used to work for the military doing, analyst work, or they used to be, a certain job role for a certain period of time, the certifications and a lot of what they have on paper for the resume and stuff like that doesn't matter as much as just, what they've accomplished in the past. So, typically, somebody can describe their accomplishments and describe, how things work. It's fairly easy to tell whether or not somebody sort of knows what they're talking about or not.
And I'm guessing you really need a 4-year degree to get a cybersecurity job.
So that's a hard question because it really depends on, who's hiring you and the industry or like where you're going. 4-year degrees, I would say it's one of those things that the knowledge from the 4-year degree is often out of date and often not super helpful to the actual job itself, especially with cybersecurity that's evolving very quickly. It can give you a good foundation on technical concepts, but a lot of the time the actual knowledge you get from that degree program isn't as valuable as the industry certifications and the things that are a lot more updated and more quickly.
So one person had a 4-year degree, no experience. Other person had no degree but 4 years experience in the Navy. Who would have the advantage?
So from my perspective, personally, the person with the 4 years of experience in the
Because
Navy.
he's done stuff, right? Or she's done stuff.
Yeah, but at Microsoft or one of the
Yeah.
more bureaucratic companies, then the 4-year degree would be necessary.
Yeah. So the private sector, should they be doing anything as far as like to support the national cybersecurity defense? Is there anything a small business owner can do, like help the federal government protect against hacking, or that's way above their level?
Yeah, I think that the federal government is so isolated from the private sector that it's less of a concern unless they're a government contractor. So government contractors nowadays, they have to adhere to a lot of the latest standards that are out there, like CMMC and a few of these other acronyms that make them conform to a certain standard of cybersecurity, and that's necessary if they're working with the government. But you can speak more generally and say that cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility because it is a national security threat, and the more the bad guys have access to our businesses and hurt our economy and things like that, the worse off we are.